Good afternoon and welcome to the school leaders attending this afternoon. I'm Natasha Vita, I'm the Education Editor of The Australian, and we've got some really good sessions this afternoon looking at cyber psychology and also the legal implications of cyber bullying and those issues. Our first speaker, I'd like to welcome Jocelyn Brewer, who is the creator of Digital Nutrition. She's a cyber psychology researcher, so that's another one of the jobs of the future that people are doing now. Jocelyn spent 19 years working in classrooms as both a teacher and as a school counsellor. So she's a teacher and a psychologist, and we're looking forward to her insights. Thank you.
Okay, how are you feeling? All 17 of you. 2 of my besties down there. Is your head pretty full by now? I know that mine is. At this point of the conference, I guess we're all cognitively maxed out. The ideas, the possibilities, the potential and opportunities to grow our schools, our practice, our students' potential has flooded our mental space. Throw in that excitement of being face-to-face again, seeing humans whole and in 3D. I'm guessing you're not just tired but wired and tired and wired all over again. So instead of shoving more information into your retinas, it's time to tune in and switch on your own immersive software by simply closing your eyes. I'm going to invite you to spend this session, if you feel comfortable doing so, with your eyes closed. I am not going to throw up a bunch of slides that you can barely read and, let's face it, we'll never ever think about again. My aim is not to say anything tweetable, but for you to sit and be present to the inside of your mind and to simply listen. I'm also not going to explain the technology of the metaverse itself. If you're looking for that, then Google is your friend. For the next 15 minutes, I encourage you to pop your phone away, to resist the pull of your devices, your bulging inbox, or your mates texting you about where drinks are going to be on later. Because let's face it, it's what we ask our students and, our offspring to do in their learning environments. I could go on a tangent here with another little experiment and ask you to imagine right now how you would feel with absolutely no consultation. I announced a decision to ban all devices in the auditorium and that all of you happily scrolling and playing Tetris, the games that I've watched people playing while I've kind of stalked, it's been really quite fascinating and research in itself. Cruising through tabs, I've told you that you were not allowed to do so. But that's another conversation, albeit absolutely related to the issues that underlie how we're going to approach our entry into this thing called the metaverse. So let's pretend it's 1997 or even 2007 again. Those idyllic years before we started swimming in a digital slipstream almost continuously. We seem to have more time spaciousness, less time pressure, less pressure. We live in an information-saturated, productivity-obsessed society. Our brains, which are effectively a remnant of the Paleolithic era, are charged with processing volumes of information that no other generation has previously been required to. In effect, we're trying to play Roblox or Minecraft on a Commodore 64, and it's taking its toll on our mood, our sleep and energy levels, on our relationships, and we're watching for young people really closely the long-term impacts of immersion in screens on their developing brains. By withdrawing this one sense for a small chunk of your day, it helps your brain slow down the information that it's processing moment by moment. And by simply shutting your eyes, you're depriving one source of sensory stimulus. You give yourself a short reprieve and you help manage overload and overwhelm. This is a micro-habit which sits in a group that's called non-sleep deep rest. There's a new one for you. That's shared to help, that I'm sharing today to help your busy mind just close your eyes for 20 seconds so that you can overcome some of that mental fatigue and replenish your brain's ability for cognitive load. It's kind of like a bucket, in effect. We're filling our buckets with information every day and we're not sleeping or resting enough to be able to process all of that information that we're consuming. So instead of a singular focus on cramming more sexier information into your head this afternoon, I'm going to give you a taster of some of the micro habits that could free up some of your mental RAM, then provide some cognitively stretching ideas about the most hyped concept in technology recently, the Metaverse. But before we jump into the Metaverse, I'm going to take a quick look at introception. Lots of people have talked about wellbeing and social emotional learning over the last few days, but often the challenge for these practices is time and competing priorities. No one has yet hacked the space-time continuum to give us more than 24 hours in a day. Level 1 of emotional intelligence, and let's be really clear here, it's in the Australian curriculum as the personal and social capability. When we talk about things like social emotional learning or emotional intelligence, that's what we're talking about. It's there with scope and sequence, and it has been for at least 5 years. But when we're talking about level 1 of emotional intelligence, it's to be able to notice and name your emotions. Introception is the ability to detect cues within your body, to have sensory awareness of the way that your body, your mind, and your feelings intersect. I was in year 6, and it was 1989 when I first learnt via a cassette tape with how to do guided progressive muscle relaxation. Scanning your body like an old PC would complete a defrag is one simple strategy of introception. Because our bodies are like a barometer. We often wait for them to break down to attend to their needs. So I'm asking you now to take a few seconds to run a mental scan from head to toe and notice what might be there. Observe where there might be tension, stuckness, resistance, even emptiness. Maybe as you sit and scan through your body, a sprinkling of hope, the shimmering of contentment, a moment of gratitude. Mentally note, what is there? How and what do you feel? Feelings, as Brené Brown outlines in her new work, The Atlas of Emotions, are not just are a combination of biography, biology, behaviour, and backstory. Feelings are not a monster. What we do with these feelings and how we learn to respond, not react to them, is key. This is called emotion regulation, and it's the holy grail of what we bang on about wanting young people to be able to exercise for themselves. Self-regulation, self-control. So what about the Metaverse, Jocelyn? Yeah, I'm getting there. I want you to be able to notice how immersing yourself in your own mental reality can be challenging. I want to provide an experience of mindful awareness for you personally so you can pass these skills on to kids. I'm not talking about mindfulness as a practice. Sure, they're good skills too, but being able to take a barometer check and to notice and name your feelings before we start being immersed in hyper and extended realities, to benchmark how we feel in environments before we augment them. Much of my work over the last decade, since I started sharing my philosophy of digital nutrition, which, if you haven't heard of it, is the positive framework for digital wellbeing and our relationship with devices, based on the analogy of food and a focus on virtual vitamins, not counting digital calories in the form of screen time, has been about the human skills that sit underneath our healthful use of devices. Our ability to sort the digital candy, so social media and gaming, use of tech for fun, from the digital kale, tech for learning and the adult prescribed activities that we want people to do with these amazing devices, is pretty poor. We're not good at being able to sort the digital candy from the digital kale. Yet we come up with all kinds of chocolate-covered broccoli to try and literally trick kids into learning with it. We polemicise young people's preference for TikTok over trigonometry, and we use electromagnetic pouches to lock up phones instead of starting TikTok clubs or running esports programs. We're in a bit of a pickle with our attitudes to digital technologies, and that's not going to change in the metaverse. My guess is that it will be heightened. No one has really taught us, how to live well online. And that online experience is shaping up to be bigger, deeper, more pervasive, immersive, realistic than the next iteration of the internet, which includes notions of interoperability, decentralisation, blockchain, and autonomous networks, non-fungible tokens, and cryptocurrencies. Head hurting again? Douglas Adams outlined rules for our attitudes to technology, namely that what's around when you're born is natural and normal, that the stuff that emerges between 15 and 35 is revolutionary and cool, but the things invented after 35 are against the natural order of things. For me, this feels like the head exploding emoji really sums up how I feel when I start to deeply imagine the metaverse. To grapple with these concepts, many of us middle ages, I'm putting my hand up as a person born in the 70s, are going to need to upgrade our mindset and stretch our thinking on what reality really is, and navigate new ways of thinking about offline versus online beyond these binary positions. The metaverse isn't actually built yet. It's a concept. I conceptualise it more of as a time you spend immersed in, just like immersing yourself in the inner world or in your imagination, which I just asked you to do, than a place that you go to. You can see early prototypes of it in the form of Second Life, released nearly 20 years ago by Linden Labs. Its creator, Philip Rosedale, says on the Hello Metaverse podcast, which is great, by the way, if you want to understand this stuff, that the more he looks into what the metaverse is, the more even he is confused by it. Another beta example is Roblox, which is a platform, not a game, and which most young people are already participating in. Roblox is one of several key players, along with obviously Meta, aka, or previously known as, Facebook, Epic Games, who make Fortnite. These are organisations attempting to be the architects of the modern digital pyramids and the billions of dollars it's going to cost to construct it. With the race to build a metaverse, which has already sold $500 million worth of real estate, and the looming arrival of Web3, we need to throw everything that we have and what we've learnt and our tardiness in action around this towards preventing the same issues repeating, even more pervasively than those we currently face with digital distraction and dependence on smartphones. There is no compulsion for these companies to create a humane and ethical metaverse, certainly not from an economic perspective. And while there's a race on to build it, it follows that this rush and competition will mean rather than going slow and making good things, we repeat the move fast and break things mentality of Silicon Valley that created the pings and dings of notification and the attention economy we're still fighting against. Thankfully, we have our eSafety Commissioner and the office that Julie Inman-Grant runs, their Safety by Design framework, along with other key players like the Centre for Humane Technology and the Australian-based Alliance for the Responsible Metaverse, lobbying for stronger imperatives around the ethical and humane-centred design of this. I commend you to explore the resources that these organisations provide, especially the eSafety Office, and the growing body of work across multiple domains of what is still ultimately the very kind of daggy digital citizenship. Totally needs a rebrand, by the way. To try and help you navigate these new waters, as well as the ones we are currently struggling in. In Buddhism, or in the language of Pali, the word metta, M-E-T-T-A, means loving kindness, benevolence, friendliness, and goodwill. We have heard about and experienced today is a little bit of loving kindness, maybe, towards ourselves by taking that break. And Richard Collada from ISTE seeded us with the idea around cyber friends rather than a focus on cyberbullying and the move from safety to wellbeing in these spaces and places. My hope is that we can collectively put pressure on tech companies to build a metaverse, one that is full of loving kindness, benevolence, friendliness, and goodwill. A place that addresses the dark patterns and behaviours, not to create a toxically positive utopia, let's face it, that's probably not going to happen either, but a dimension that champions the best aspects of humanity, connection, communication, and community over addiction, silencing, and withdrawal. The reality is, when we look around, most Australians live in cities. Cities that are being developed with high rises, where councils and state governments often fail to plan for social and community needs, especially those of young people. And this is where the geography teacher in me comes through. As councils approve more high-rises, people live in even more boxed off from our traditional, inverted commas, villages than even a generation ago in the suburbs. Often huge developments come with no additional green spaces and only tokenistic community spaces, without the staffing to coordinate or plan social activities and provide the scaffolds and frameworks for communities to gather. It's literally, here's a room, go do it for yourself. Yet, as we see with the climate strikes, kids often do. Schools too go upwards and have to roster year cohorts for access to grassed areas at playtime. These are not problems created by technology, but they might foster our dependence on it. While the idea of kids going on field trips to far-off lands and travelling back in time for history lessons are another exciting shiny object put forth in conversations around the possibility of this tech in education, the most likely reality is that in a decade, teenagers will be experiencing natural environments, mostly through VR headsets. We know being in nature, being able to see a horizon, is good for us, yet our access to this resource is diminishing. It might conjure visions of Soylent Green, and I'm showing my age here, but that scene with a woman where she's eating the strawberry jam, where she spent like huge amounts of money on it, and she's like squirreled away eating the strawberry jam, is probably a reason why I'm a bit of an eco-warrior. And we might feel that's a bit of an outlandish stretch to suggest that kids will live plugged into realities via their headsets. The futurist and game designer Jane McGonigal will actually suggest that if your conceptualisation of the future in 10 years' time is not ridiculous, at least at first, then you're probably not thinking dynamically enough. I certainly didn't imagine 10 years ago that I would have a qualification as a cyber psychologist and be using an app where I randomly 3 times a day am asked to take a photo of myself in order to show that I am being real. From where I stand, we might seem stuck in a paradigm that still we mostly fail to position young people as experts in their own lives and learning, where we tokenise young people's participation in events, but we fail to give them a voice at the table and to listen to what they're saying. In many ways, our Office of the E-Safety Commission, again, is championing new ways of giving people these voices and roles, and I know many schools are moving from tokenism to full participation of students in decisions which impact their future. Thankfully, in this new phase of Web3 and the Metaverse, we will all be digital immigrants together. No more talk of digital natives versus immigrants versus orphans. We will let kids join in the design and governance as they will inherit it along with what's left of the planet. We need new tools for living well in this space, new ways of championing our internal signals and grounding into what makes us and keeps us human, empathetic, connected and conscious. I'm aggregating a new toolkit called Metaversal Wellbeing. This is a project that came out of the pandemic, where 2 years ago I was introduced to a brand strategist in New York via Zoom, and we clicked, and we clicked, and we kept clicking and zooming and scheming, and created a new way of thinking about these tools. You can start to check it out as we build it. We're aggregating tools with some of the best people around the world who have asked these same questions. I'm going to finish today with the same call to action that I left the audience with when I spoke in that big hall just before Sir Ken Robinson at EduTech 2019. And that is simply for us to be kind to our minds, to value much more explicitly the computing power in our skulls and the power that we have to immerse ourselves in our own realities to create the multiverse that is anchored in meta, the meta with 2 T's. Thanks.